Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Neuro-Inclusive DogPod. This is a podcast where we bridge the gap between neurodivergence and the dog world. And today I am joined by another fantastic guest, which is Nathalie from Your Perfect Pupper. So, hello, Nathalie. Would you mind giving us a little bit of an introduction, who you are and what you do, please?
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, so as you say, my business is called Your Perfect Pupper. And basically what I want to achieve is that everybody can have a dog if they want to. Come on, we all want dogs, right?
Yep.
But for me, it's all about helping prospective first-time dog owners. I want them to understand what it means to be a dog owner, because a lot of people just don't really know what it means.
Yeah.
Get a breed that fits with them, and then give them all the information and all the tools that they need to be a confident and prepared dog owner. I am, as you say, this is a neurodivergent podcast. I am neurodivergent myself. I have ADHD and I'm autistic. So I do offer that sort of extra level of support and understanding to neurodivergent people, because I know how easy it is to get overwhelmed when you're trying to find information, or God forbid, decision paralysis, which is a big one. So I want them to be having everything they want, everything they need in one place. Because, if I put that focus on a sort of simplified process, it means that they don't have that stress, that added stress, which as a neurodivergent person is very difficult to navigate anyway. And I do this I have a blog, hopefully soon some digital content like online courses, and just step by step to make them, thrive, both, owner and dog, from day one.
Yeah, I think that's it as well, isn't it? It can be quite overwhelming whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent. When you make that decision to, I want a dog, it's like, where do you go from here? And you've got all the different, like, the breeds, and then even if you choose a breed, it's like, will that breed actually fit in with me? If you've got other family members or a partner or anything, like, what your needs are might be different to what their needs are, and trying to find the exact one to match everybody's needs is quite overwhelming. And then even when you get a breed, it's like, what, where do you go in terms of what breed do you go to? Because you go on the internet and it's just a plethora of information, and it's like, even some of the information isn't necessarily correct. So it's like trying to pick out all of these things, isn't it, on top of, some people just want a dog. And like you say, I think sometimes we get a dog, and I think it's we get the dog, we bring it home, and then people start to think about, oh, I best train it now. So what you do is you kind of, that step beforehand, making sure you kind of eliminate as many problems as possible before they get that dog, and they're like, oh, because what can tend to happen, can't it, is people can bring a dog home and they'll think about training, and then their lifestyle kind of comes into it as well, and they're like, actually, this is kind of not that they've made a wrong choice, it's just different to what they've expected. And then you're kind of like firefighting, aren't you? And then it can almost have the opposite effect. I mean, we all have these moments, don't we, when we bring a dog home and we go, oh my God, what have I done? But I think normally we get over them. But I think if it's a wrong match, then those become intensified. And it's like, where do you go from there, and that kind of thing. So what inspired you to support people before they bring a dog home? So what made you want to get in there before they've even purchased a dog, so to speak?
It actually started with me, like, I wanted to be a business owner for God knows how many years in the dog world. But I think, like, most logically people go, oh, I become a dog trainer, because that's what people associate with a dog business. But I never had the funds to properly train myself to become a dog trainer. Because it's different from, like, training your own dogs to learn, the basics. But, working with behavioral problems, you can't just learn that off like an online course. So I just sort of that the idea lingered, but I didn't have like a specific idea. And then, just because I have such a wonderfully weird brain, all of a sudden I was like, hang on a minute. I see people, like, like shows on TV, or like dog trainers. I see people out and about with dogs, and I'm like, something is wrong here, quote unquote wrong. And that's when I started to realize that a lot of these problems, as you say, stem from getting the wrong breed, one that doesn't match your lifestyle, and more importantly, your energy levels. So I realized that like sort of the mismatch between, owner and breed, as well as not really having the proper knowledge on dog ownership, that's when problems start to arise.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you basically have three options, right? You can ignore the behavior, which it will only get worse, and you and the dog will be stressed out for however many years it's going to continue.
Yeah.
You can say, look, I can't handle it anymore, bring it to a shelter and be done with it.
Yeah.
Or you can become that responsible dog owner and say, okay, look, I'm going to spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, and more importantly, a lot of money on
Yeah.
dog trainers.
Yeah.
Now, because I'm Dutch, right? In Dutch, we have a saying, if I translate it, it says prevention is better than a cure.
Yeah.
Meaning that why would you want a cure for something that you can prevent from happening?
Yeah.
And like I said, if you have this mismatch, right, between the breed and the owner, combined with like improper knowledge or just, not having the right tools, that leads to these people needing a cure where
Yeah.
they don't really needed one if they had the right tools from the beginning.
Yeah.
And you will probably only spend half of the time and energy by properly raising your dog from the start rather than going backwards, where you need to spend more time to unlearn behavior, because that is a lot more work
Yes.
than learning a behavior.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of like where like all of this come from. I realized that this could really be, hopefully, hopefully
Yeah.
something that people see the value of,
Yes.
that they understand that, if you go further down the line with issues, it's going to be a lot more difficult than when you do it from the start. Um,
Yes.
and this is nothing against dog trainers. Like dog trainers are like good ones, top notch, always necessary, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
this sort of view is mostly from like when you get a puppy, because if you have a
Yeah.
shelter dog, yeah, you are more likely to need a dog trainer, because you never know the baggage of the dog. But
Yeah.
for puppy, start right, and you will hopefully minimize the risk of needing a lot of work and money with dog
Yeah.
trainers down the line.
Yeah, definitely. Even something you said there, like you said about how prevention is like better than cure, and also like if you have to unlearn the behaviors, it just flicked into my head about loose lead training, and it's like one of those things that when people have puppies, they don't spend the time necessarily as much time as they think they should spend. It's quite an without getting to the in-depths of loose lead training, what tends to happen is when the puppy is small, people can cope with it pulling on a lead and stuff because it's not really much of a problem. And then what happens is that the dog gets older, the dog gets stronger, and it hits maybe adolescence or something. Then all of a sudden they've got this massive problem, but they don't realize they might have, I don't know, 6 months of a year of work to actually undo. And I think it's a little bit like that, isn't it? I think the unawareness of, when you get a dog, whether it's something like loose lead training or just getting a dog in general, you kind of get it. And even with some of the things that are later become a problem, they're not so much of a problem until that reality sets in, because it might be they bring a puppy home and it's all fun and games and all of this, and then obviously puppies sleep a lot, don't they? And then they don't tend to do that much really until they start to grow, and it tends to be then that people go, oh my god, what on earth have I got involved with? How on earth am I gonna deal with this?
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite cute when you have a small Rottweiler puppy jumping up at you, but not so cute anymore when he's fully grown.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So when people are choosing a puppy, what do you think is the most common thing that gets overlooked when they first start to have a look?
I found two things actually. I mean, one, obviously we already mentioned, breed related. People take a breed that's not suitable for them.
Yeah.
I always say, don't take a husky if you're a couch potato.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not going to work.
Yeah.
Um, because you need to know, like, if you work from home, great. You can walk your own dog, great. But if you work away from home, you're gone 10 hours a day, and when you're home, you're like, oh, just to stroll around the block is fine.
Yeah.
You don't want to take a high energy breed, because not only you're going to get quote unquote simple behavioral problems, your neighbor's not going to like you when there's like excessive barking, or when you
Yeah.
come home and your couch is chewed up. You're not going to be very happy.
Yeah.
Um, but then, on the reverse side, if you are really an active person, you go on long hikes, you don't go for a toy breed, because it doesn't match with what you want.
Yeah.
So that is definitely the biggest one. That, again, that mismatch between energy and you know, what your own energy levels are and what the dog's energy levels are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the second bit, which kind of relates to that, is that people don't understand what a breed is originally bred for.
Yeah.
You know, all dogs are bred for a reason, whether that's to work or whether it's to be a companion.
Mm-hmm.
But if you cannot fulfill the needs of the breed,
Yeah.
again, you run the risk of unwanted behaviors. You know, you see that, for example, with border collies. I know that you know, with agility, they are like the kings and queens of agility.
Apart from
But
spaniels, mind you.
really, oh, see, learn something new.
I'm biased though. I have 3 spaniels, so
But you're allowed to be biased, right?
yeah.
That's yeah, we're allowed to play little favorites sometimes.
That's it.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I mean, first of all, I would never recommend a border collie anyway to a first-time dog owner. But
Yeah.
you know, they are bred for such a specific purpose, which is herding.
Yeah.
And yes, you have show lines, obviously, but most people don't know the difference between a show line and a working line. So they get
Yeah.
a working line dog and they go like, oh my God, he's snipping the kids, he is snipping at
Yeah.
their heels, trying to hurt the kids. What do
Yeah.
I do? But there are a number of breeds that are like very specific, bred for specific reasons, like the husky, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sleigh pulling and all of that. That's what they're bred for.
Yeah.
But you can substitute that by, you know, either have something on wheels if you don't have snow, or
Mm-hmm.
go on hikes with backpacks. But with a border collie, or like even, you know, I think it's slightly lesser known in the UK, but like the Australian cattle dog, for example,
Yeah. Yeah.
they are so specific that you cannot substitute that for something else. And
Yeah.
if you're not aware of what a dog is bred for, you can't actually help them to achieve their needs.
Yeah.
So, you know, those are, I think, definitely the biggest problems I think we see with, you know, people trying to just get a dog. Say, oh yeah, just get a dog, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, you picked us up on something that I used to see a lot when I was running more dog training group classes and general dog training. People would come and they would come with, I don't know, a Labrador or even a Spaniel or whatever breed it may be. And I'd say, oh, where's the dog bred from? Is it a working or a show lines? And they just wouldn't know. And they were like, oh, I'm not sure. I think the mum used to work or something. They just have no idea. And they, like you say, if you take something like a Labrador, there is such a massive difference between a show Labrador and a working lab. It's just completely different, you know, similar to the Spaniels are similar. However, the show ones are quite energetic still, but it's like, it's just the not knowing as well. And I think if we can get into like owners beforehand and make them aware of this, so when they're looking for a pup, then they're like actually asking more questions to the breeder. And I think that's a really good point to reiterate, really, is because, you know, if it is your first dog and you're not familiar of dogs and stuff, like, you know, that a lot of people just don't know these things and that know that there is such a massive difference. So I think as well, like, I know we've spoken a lot with how you help people when they're first getting a dog. I suppose your service as well could be for people who already have a dog that would like a second dog and maybe their circumstances have changed, for example. So, for example, let's use me as an example. If I was to, I don't know, stop doing agility and I just wanted a dog to be a companion, come out on walks with me and, you know, just, you know, not do anything too strenuous like, you know, agility or anything like that, then I would completely, because all I mainly know is spaniels apart from what I do with clients and stuff, it's like that kind of thing. Maybe they've got a lifestyle change and maybe they can come to you for advice, like, where, you know, this is what I want now, I know this is what I've had, but what would you advise with that kind of thing? So that could be a nice little area to look into as well, just as a little side thought.
Like, anyone who wants a dog, I can help. But it's like you say, like those who've never had a dog, or maybe they've had a dog growing up, but not as an adult.
Yeah.
You know, those, especially those people, because they think, oh, you know, mom and dad had a dog, it's fine, it's great, I can do this. And then they go like, uh-oh.
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to people with neurodivergence, so we all know that neurodivergent people tend to, you know, have a natural empathy with animals anyway. And for me, my own dogs have been a massive help when it comes to my own neurodivergent journey. However, like you say, I do agility and we are quite an active family. But when it comes to somebody with neurodivergence that maybe wanting a dog, maybe it's their first dog, maybe they've read online or something, or they've been told that, you know, get a dog because it might help you, get out and about more or whatever that might be. So if somebody with neurodivergence wanted a dog, not necessarily for an assistance dog, because, we've covered that in various other podcast episodes, but I'm talking mainly for like a pet or a companion. Do you think there is certain breeds that you would recommend more for that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, regardless of whether or not you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, you would still need to evaluate everything within your life, right? But yeah, there are differences. For example, with ADHD, a lot of people are hyperactive. So, you would do well to get a hyper dog, one that you can play with, one that you can just be crazy with. Like, for example, a boxer. Great, boxers are great. They're like 4-year-old children, regardless of their age. So if you want a dog that is like happy-go-lucky, who loves that sort of activeness without necessarily needing hikes, but like playing, that would be really good. But on the other hand, if you are autistic, you probably be better off with a calmer dog. One that is, yeah, you need to walk them. I mean, it's great for, even for autistic people to get out and about. But they need something calmer because they get overstimulated quite quickly. You can, for example, greyhounds or whippets would be really good for them because they get their little thumb zoomies and then they just snooze on the couch. And they're both really good for first-time dog owners as well. You can definitely look into the classics, the golden retriever, the Labrador retriever. They are extremely adaptable, and obviously they have a great temperament. I mean, that's probably why they're always used as assistance dogs as well. So if they're good for assistance dogs, they're good for anybody. Provided, again, of course, that you can provide their needs. If it's obviously very size dependent as well. So if you want, for example, the bigger ones, again, the golden retriever, the Labrador, great. Medium-sized, something that is good for first-time dog owners, you're gonna love this, is a Cocker Spaniel. Because they have that sort of moderately active level, obviously, again, slightly dependent on the individual dog. But they are so gentle, they're very affectionate, they're very sociable. And especially if you are someone who is autistic and you're maybe a little sure, they can be a great dog to get you out and get you talking to people, because a dog will obviously be like a lower barrier for talking to people, because you can talk about the dog, you don't have to talk about yourself. But for example, you might look for something small like lap size. Shih Tzu is a really good option. It's a very calm dog, but it's also, again, a dog really good for first-time dog owners. The one thing though, I mean, I know that you're talking not necessarily assistance dog training, but like, I guess I have to mention it because like it's such an ethical thing. I'm in groups too, right, on Facebook for like owner trained assistance dogs. And one question that I quite often see is, which breed is a good breed? And many people say, oh, go for a Labradoodle or a cockapoo. But these people, yes, they might have been very, very lucky with their dog, but they're not always good anyway, whether you want to train them as an assistance dog or not. But because you have a dog, for example, take the Labradoodle, you have not one but two very high energy level breeds, very intelligent breeds into one. I mean, the poodle is the second smartest breed, just behind the border collie. So like they need a lot of physical exercise, a lot of mental exercise. And if they don't get it, they're gonna get, quote unquote, unwanted behaviors again. But the main problem I have, and that's what I want to warn people about who are looking for a dog to may or maybe not train, that's up to them. These breeds, I mean, like they're fashionable in a sense, people want them. It's not an official breed, but people think, oh, they're so great, they're hip, they're in, but 99.99% of the cases, they're not ethically bred. They come from puppy mills. And I feel that is very important to note, because, as a neurodivergent person, if someone tells you, oh, go for a Labradoodle or a cockapoo, I want people to understand that, they're going to be in probably potentially a lot of run into issues with, obviously puppy mills, because it's not ethical, and it's certainly
Yeah.
not good for your dog, because you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It is one of those things, and I see as a trainer, I see such a massive range of just taking, not that we're picking on the cockapoos or anything, but just taking that breed in general. Same as spaniels, like purely bred spaniels. There is such a range of like diversity between, you'll get some of the ones that are quieter and calmer, and if people have friends that have got that breed and they're like, oh well, I want to get a dog like my friend's dog, you're not necessarily going to get one with the same mix in it. You might get two
Exactly.
working line, a working line poodle, a working line spaniel, and then you're going to be like, oh my god. And I suppose especially as well with things like families with children, you have to be super careful, because obviously with the spaniel side of things, spaniels want to pick up things, keep them in the mouth, that kind of thing. If you've got a family that is busy, got toys, not that everybody keeps toys everywhere, but you know what I'm saying, and the dog's picking them up, and then you're going to take that off the dog, you've got potential of like resource guarding issues, that kind of thing. And
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's understanding, like you say, the breed specifics before actually bringing a dog home, that these spaniels are bred to go and carry things, fetch things in the mouth and things, and hold things. I think even Labradors do as well, don't they? And it's like knowing how to, and whether that's going to fit in with your lifestyle, because if you do have children or whatever, or even if you're just busy yourself and you do have the odd thing lying around, it's knowing how that's going to happen, and either managing it and making sure it doesn't happen before, preventing it, or thinking actually maybe this breed isn't for us, we are a bit of a chaotic household, there's stuff everywhere, kind of thing, that kind of thing. So yeah, there is definitely a lot to think about, isn't there, when it comes to picking the right dog.
So like, oh, but my dog doesn't do this. But I'm like, yeah, but there are always exceptions to every rule.
Yeah.
Like we've had, when I was growing up, we had a German Shepherd who was the absolute laziest dog I've ever met.
Yeah.
You would think a German Shepherd, working breed, wants to go on long walks. He could be left alone all day, and he would basically be disappointed when you got home, because will have to get off the couch to make room for us.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean that I can say to everybody, oh, take a German Shepherd, it's easy breed. So
Yeah.
that's what people sometimes forget. Oh, Uncle Bob's dog is such a lazy dog. I'll
Yeah.
get one too. And then they go like, oh God, I
Yeah.
have a breed that is acting like his or her breed.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, like I say, with neurodivergence as well, it's quite easy to become overwhelmed, isn't it? And things. So I think
Yeah.
that definitely, like I say, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, but especially neurodivergent, there's so much other stuff going on that we feel as humans that add that to a wrong match, kind of thing, and it can be sometimes a recipe for disaster, where everybody's going to get feel sad, really, because ultimately if it is a mismatch, the owners might feel like they've failed in some way, they might have to rehome the dog, and and like I say, the work that you do it can stop all of this before the dog's even brought home, can't it, by just matching them up correctly with their needs and the dog's needs, so to speak.
Exactly.
So when it comes to, you touched on earlier on about your own neurodivergent journey. So would you be happy to share a little bit about that, your experience with your own neurodivergence, and how that shows up for you in your business from a business perspective?
I have always been open about my neurodivergence, so why not? I think for there are goods and bads. If I look at the quote unquote bad thing, my
Yeah.
imposter syndrome is like the worst ever. I have had many moments where I thought, oh my God, who am I to do this? Like, who is going to pay me for my services, my products?
Mm.
Who? People don't know me. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, why? So that sort of constant doubt um really led me to sort of like step back and like, do I really want to do this? Do I not want to do this?
Mm.
Because if you don't see a lot of business models, like when you're on Instagram or whatever, it's all from a neurotypical standpoint, and
Yeah.
you feel like, but that doesn't fit me. Like, if I do this, will people take me seriously? If I do something different than, company A or whatever. So I think that is definitely one of my main issues, alongside my perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, I'm slowly trying to step away from everything needing to be perfect or look perfect before I launch it. For example, my website is not exactly how I want it to be, but I've learned, okay, look, I am happy enough to just at least launch it.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very scary thing to do.
Yeah.
But, I think the perfectionism is quite common in neurodivergent people, but it can be quite a detrimental spiral to be in. And it can be quite tricky to get out. Like that first step is very difficult.
Yeah.
For me, at the moment, I'm in an autistic burnout, which really impacts like the time I can spend on, or not necessarily the time, more like the energy I can spend on my business.
Yeah.
My whole nervous system is just like I want to, but I can't.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you're trying to set up a business or run a business that kind of demands consistency, or at least people out there demand it from you. So I'm learning a lot about pacing myself, setting boundaries, because ultimately I want to create something for me that is sustainable, not
Yeah.
just successful. I need to be able to do this for hopefully a long period of time. Um, However, there are some good things. I mean, a positive thing really is because I'm neurodivergent. That's why my business exists.
Yeah.
Because yes, I cater to first-time dog owners in general, but that sort of lived experience helps me to better understand the neurodivergent people. If you're neurotypical
Yeah.
and if you want to like learn about neurodivergence, absolutely brilliant, right? Like kudos to you. But it's kind of still not the same as having lived experience. So like I know the overwhelm, I know the struggle, I know the decision paralysis and wanting to do things quote unquote right,
Yeah.
um, but not have access to the sort of same kind of support that works for my brain. So I try to create everything from a standpoint that really helps a neurodivergent person, but without sort of letting the neurotypical people know that I've changed it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So like, for example, I'm
Yeah.
going to create an online course, right?
Yeah.
And if I was a neurotypical person, I would create one giant course, start to finish, be done with it. But I know it's not going to work for neurodivergent people, right? Because we're like, no, it's too much, it's too overwhelming, too daunting.
Yeah.
They will stop before they even try anything. So what I'm
Yeah.
going to do is I'm going to create the whole course, but in structured mini courses.
Yeah.
Um, and again, if I was neurotypical, I would record myself, video, walk people through the course, and that's that. But again, I also know that doesn't work for neurodivergent people because videos are great, right? I mean, there are people out there neurodivergent, for example, with dyslexia who can't read or they're slow readers and they
Yeah.
want to look at you and to listen to you without having the fear of like, oh my God, I can't read this.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you're sick and tired of my face and my voice and you just want to read, that's fine. So people can pick and choose. So it's going to
Yeah.
be both. They're going to be the video and there's going to be like literally everything that I talk about will be written down as well. So people can choose.
Yeah.
And if you are neurotypical, that's probably not something that you would understand because understandable, you don't know because you don't have that brain.
Yeah.
So it's going to be some extra time and effort put in for neurodivergent people without the neurotypical people really, they're not losing any quality or any sort of fun way of doing this, but the neurodivergent people will notice that you put in that extra time.
Yes.
So yeah, being neurodivergent a business owner it's very messy sometimes. I'm sure you know that too.
Yeah.
But it does help me connect with people, and I feel that's sort of like a really like validating feeling, and that's for me is the best part of my job, being able to connect with people on a different level than a neurotypical person.
Yeah, and I think that's I think one of the main reasons that I started this whole neurodivergent dog hub up, because I realized throughout my journey, I really started in the dog world and I had no idea when I first started that I was neurodivergent. I just thought I was extremely anxious, and then obviously got my dog to help me with that. And then when I first started doing classes and developing classes, I built classes in a way that as I know as a neurodivergent person would want the classes to run. Like we'd put all the little extras in there. We'd start, when we did the instructions at the start of the class, we'd do them in several different ways. So I'd have a demo dog. I'd also have a whiteboard with written instructions on, and I would obviously speak them as well. And all the little extra touches that I wasn't seeing, but I needed for, because I was going to dog training classes with my own dog. I was like, actually, we're going to do it differently. And I just did it because that's what I would need. But like looking at it from a neurodivergent, through a neurodivergent lens, it's like, oh, that's dead obvious now that's why I did it, because that's what I needed. And I think just in the dog world in general, when it comes to dog training or whatever service it is, there is such this massive gap between, you turn up to and it's this way and this is what happens, and it's always just been that way. And I think it can be quite overwhelming. And one of the things that I've noticed, and definitely I felt like, in the dog world in general, with is kind of this negative spin about going onto the internet and getting your training from X trainer or that trainer that might not be ethical. However, what I feel, and I'm super passionate about, is the fact that if we are not providing what neurodivergent people need, then they are not going to come to the classes because they're not going to feel safe enough to be there. So they're going to go to the internet, and it's kind of like we're driving them to these people that we moan about that are on the internet, but they wouldn't exist if we were kind of providing that service ourselves. So I think it's definitely helps when you are neurodivergent and have a dog business or any dog business to look at all of those little extra bits. And like you say, it's not about the neurotypical people. They wouldn't necessarily notice. They just get extras, so to speak. But the neurodivergent people would be like, oh, wow, this is delivered in a way that my brain can understand. This is fantastic, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when it comes to changes that you've made for your own business to support yourself, is there any main changes that you have made that you've found, oh, this is what I've done and this is what works for me, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've done for myself, or at least I should say I'm sort of slowly learning to do, is give myself permission to build my business that works with my brain rather than
Yeah.
against it.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress, but
Yeah.
baby steps. But it does mean sort of like unlearning a lot of, shall we say, shoulds that are
Yeah.
taught in business, like, oh, you must post on social media daily, you must hustle constantly or run a rigid schedule to be taken
Yeah.
seriously. But you know whenever I saw those examples, I'm like, but I can't do that. And if you already have imposter syndrome, that's not a good thing. So I am focusing on creating something flexible that works for me, but also like my energy levels and my focus. So, for example, if I feel like, okay, I'm in hyper focus, I'm going to batch content.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if I feel like no, then I won't do it. Like I'm teaching myself I don't have to be on like 24/7.
Yeah.
That's okay. You don't have to be, but that's something that we're sort of learning by watching other businesses, because
Yeah.
they're like posting several times a day and you're like, oh God, I have to do that too, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Checklists certainly help, because you get that sort of dopamine hit every time you can cross off something off your checklist. And it
Yeah.
seems a very simple tool, but it really works for me anyway.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if something for me feels chaotic or overwhelming to manage,
Mm-hmm.
I allow myself to step back and say, okay, just take a break. For example, like I've written a really long blog post on how to recognize puppy mills.
Right.
And it's not only been very draining in terms of like the length of it and doing the research, but it's such an emotionally heavy topic
Yeah.
that it's taken me way longer than I wanted it. But I knew like if I keep forcing myself, I'm not going to be able to deliver what I want. Plus, I suffer, with the emotional drainage from it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, just step back and come back later when you feel better. And that
Yeah.
works. But you do have to sort of realize when that happens, which can be
Yeah.
tricky if you're neurodivergent, and especially if you haven't been diagnosed very long, or it's just maybe a self-diagnosis.
Yeah.
One thing that I can very much recommend is using AI. So I have ChatGPT, I have the Plus version. I have created my custom GPT, which is absolutely great because I literally dump my brain in there.
Yeah.
And it helps me to get things out of my brain, because if I
Yeah.
keep it in, it's going to be just whirling around and I don't know what to do with it. So I
Yeah.
dump it in my custom chat, and it gives me back some feedback, or like, oh, have you considered so and so, or like, well done. It's so much better because like you have someone to sort of bounce ideas off without necessarily needing someone there. I mean, it's AI, it's not perfect, but
Yeah.
it's certainly helpful.
Yeah.
And I think, oh God, one of the things that I struggle with, and I think it's very common in neurodivergence, is celebrating your progress.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
celebrating like milestones, or it can be like launching a
Mm,
business or just, finishing up a blog post. We really struggle in saying, you know what, I've accomplished something. Well done to
yeah,
myself. Um,
yeah,
and it might just be a small thing for some, like finishing an email, but
yeah.
for a neurodivergent, it is so important to recognize small wins. Like I
Yeah,
remember when I got an email a couple of weeks ago that I was nominated for an award. I'm like, whoa, an
yeah,
award? Me? Like I have no paying clients. I've just launched. Like,
yeah,
really? Me? And apparently they found me organically, which is even better because like I had no idea who they were.
yeah.
Um, and they were like, I was, how did I put it? Recognized for simplifying dog ownership with personalized consultation and neurodivergent inclusivity. And I'm
Hmm.
like, wow, me. And I was like, but you know what? I'm not going to win. Again, the imposter syndrome was like, no, but
Yeah,
I was nominated. Great. But that's probably where it ends. And then
yeah,
like 3 weeks ago, I won that
yeah.
category. I'm like,
Amazing.
oh my God. And that's when you learn like, your own brain is working against you,
Yes. Yeah,
because I have imposter syndrome, but here is like proof that I am not as an imposter as I think I am.
yeah.
So it's sort of building yourself up, I think is really something that I'm slowly learning. It's definitely something that I want to recommend people to do as much as they can.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So you touched on a few things there, and I definitely feel that sense of, as a neurodivergent, I am definitely guilty of it, especially training agility as well, because you always like, you have a win or you have a success, and you're like, right, next, and you just
Yeah,
super moving on to that next thing, and actually making yourself actually stop and celebrate and stuff, even if it's something as silly as like, I'm just going to go and buy my favorite chocolate bar or whatever it is, and like you say, it's the same in business, like, oh, I've done a bit more on my website, or I've wrote this blog or whatever it is. I think it is that just giving yourself kind of a pat on the back, especially if you work alone as well, because we don't usually have a team of people around us, and it is just us, and
true.
everything's always, like you say, with social media, so fast paced. And I think putting my business coach head on, it's kind of, that's what I do with my clients all the time. I'm like, just forget what you see out there, because especially if you're neurodivergent, your way, or even if you're neurotypical, you can build a business that suits you. And I think if it doesn't suit you, from personal experience, so last year I was teaching way more agility one-to-ones on in person, but my clients weren't really aligning with what my brain wanted to do, kind of thing, and it actually led me to burnout, and I actually stopped teaching agility for a little while. And then you sometimes have to sit back and put your business head on, and all of this kind of thing. There's so much going on, and it's just tweaking, making those different tweaks to, well, I do teach, I'm back teaching in person, but I limit the amount of clients I'd have on a certain day. And like you say, sometimes I can do 40 hours of work within like 4 hours, but then other days I won't want to do anything at all. And I
Yeah.
think it's like doing that, but also knowing that you don't have to. So one of my kind of toxic traits, if you want it, is when I do everything, I'm like, yeah, let's just put it all out there. And my brain needs to like rein in and go, no, actually save it for on the days where you don't want to do these things. So I think it's really important. And I'm a fan of using ChatGPT as well. However, one of the things I struggle with from my own neurodivergent perspective is I'll put things into ChatGPT and then the dopamine hits there and it can just go. So I'm like, oh, I've done that now. Me and ChatGPT have spoke about that's done, but it's not. Do you know what I mean? And then they'll like fade away, and I'm like, actually, I need to go back to that. So I use AI and stuff a lot to help me, but sometimes I'm super careful because I've got like 27 different projects all in my brain, and it's like, actually, I just need to focus and hone on this. So I think it's whatever business you have, it's tailoring things. So one of my business coaching catchphrases is your business your way, because it has to be your way, because otherwise it's not sustainable, and you are going to burn out, and you're going to lose a joy for it, aren't you, really?
And especially when you have both ADHD and autism at the same
Yeah.
time, because you're such a walking contradiction.
Yeah.
Because like my ADHD brain has like 100 different ideas, good ideas, but my
Yeah.
autism is like, whoa, no, overwhelm, don't. And then you just
Exactly.
fall into that hole and you go like, nothing happens.
Yeah. this is it. This is definitely me. So if you were to give some advice to someone who is just starting to run a business and wants to be more of aware of their own needs so they don't start up and get overwhelmed, what would your advice be to someone who is just starting up or who wants to be more aware of their own needs?
If you're looking, for example, in a pet business, obviously you would need to learn how to work with animals, obviously.
Yeah.
But definitely people, because I think what a lot of people forget is that people are very emotional when it comes to animals. Like even like emotional purchases, like people like, that's what this is all about. People like, oh, I've seen that breed on TV, I want it because it looks great. That's an emotional purchase. They're not thinking. So you need to be not only empathetic to that, obviously, but you need to be the voice of reason. Like you need to advocate for it. This is if you have a pet business, but you need to advocate for the animals and make sure that people understand their pet, what they want, what they need. So it can be a tricky balance because people can be fickle, shall we say. um Secondly, and I think this is just for any business that you want to own, is you matter, like you as a business owner matter just as much as the people that you service or help.
Exactly.
A lot of people, and I think this is certainly like in the pet business, they really throw themselves in there. They put all their heart and soul in it, but they forget themselves.
Yes.
And then obviously, that can lead to burnout. And then maybe you will even just give up, which is, it's sad because, you want to be a business owner and you really want to, but you just don't have the right information in your head to do so. Definitely notice energy. And I think this is especially important if you're neurodivergent, because, some people have really good hyperfocus during the day, others in the evening. Find what works for you. If you have a day that, you have to run errands, don't plan anything to do in your business. If you get something done, great. If you don't, that's great too, because you didn't plan for it. So find that balance to, like, doing too much and maybe for your own brain not doing enough. Because as I said before, like, you don't have to be productive 24/7, which is very difficult if you have ADHD to, like, not be trying to be productive 24/7. And gosh, what else? I think I like to call them sort of permission points. So you just do like tiny check-ins with yourself. Like, okay, do I need rest right now? Do I need to do something differently right now? But you really need to sort of sit down and have those moments, because if you don't, it's kind of like similar to like a time audit. Like, where does your time go? You need to do an energy audit. Where does my energy go? What do I need to do differently? What works best for me? And try not to sort of fall into that, quote unquote 9 to 5 productivity. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. If you have a brain that works really well at 10 o'clock at night, go for it. Make sure that you plan your work 10 o'clock at night. And just, make sure that you have a structure, you have the space, you have the support of people who help you. Like, I don't have like family support for this, but like your group and other groups are really helpful, just to have someone there to like support you and say like, well done, you've got this. Or if you have a question, ask people who get it, like who are in the same boat basically. And if you do that, your job doesn't become a job, it becomes like a joyful thing that you can sort of do hopefully for the rest of your life. So be patient, be kind to yourself.
Definitely. You picked up on, like you say, the energy thing there. And one of the things I talk about with my coaching clients is, well, I describe it as like an energy battery. And it doesn't matter whether it's your social energy battery or your work energy battery. You're going to have activities or people that are going to drain the battery. But then it's making sure that your diary is topped up then by like charging up activities or charging up people. And I think it is that balance, like I say, especially when you're neurodivergent, of if we have got too many people draining our battery or too many boring activities like, I don't know, accounts, you know, sorry for anybody who likes accounts, but you know, do something like that, then you're going to come, you know, you're going to be like, oh my God, I feel so, depleted basically. So it's like about learning how to balance everything up and making sure your battery is as full as it can be. And if you are doing these draining activities, making sure you're putting something in to fill it up, even if that's just 5 minutes off and a cup of tea or whatever it is. So before we finish up, that's it. Yeah, definitely. So before we finish up, I've got some quick fire round questions just to get to know you a little bit more. So number one, tea or coffee?
Tea, definitely.
Tea. See, when I've done these before, everybody's been coffee so far, apart from Kay, who didn't drink either. So I'm finally got a tea buddy.
yeah, definitely tea.
So if you had to pick, what is your favorite dog breed?
German Shepherd.
Amazing. We've not had one of those yet.
I've had a few, so.
What is your go-to dog product that you use or you recommend all the time?
That's a tricky one, because obviously I am in between dogs at the moment. But just in general, a really, really good collar, like for walking, like it needs to be proper, like it needs to be good quality. So good quality that fits.
Yeah, definitely. So lead walk or off lead adventure?
Preferably off lead adventure. I live in Belgium. Off lead dog walking is not allowed, but
oh wow.
Yeah, it's against the law actually here. Unless you go to like proper like enclosed like dog spaces, but otherwise you're not allowed to walk them off leash.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Very interesting. Cool. And what's your favorite way to recharge after a busy day?
I wish I had a favorite way to recharge. So let's just pick watching like a good movie or a good TV series.
Oh, amazing. Super. It's been fantastic to talk to you on the podcast. So if people listening want to get in further contact with you, either to use your services or just to get a bit more information, where should they go? What are your touch points?
Well, they can find my stuff via my own personal Facebook page if you can hover on it, but you can also email me at info@yourperfectpupper.com.
Perfect. And then if you send me all the links, I will put it all underneath as well. So
awesome.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. And thank you to everybody who's either watching or listening. Make sure before you before you hop off the page, make sure that you press follow or subscribe, depending on what you are watching or listening to. And we'll see you again soon for another episode of the Neuro-Inclusive DogPod. So goodbye from me and goodbye from Nathalie.
Bye.
Bye-bye.